Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth and final TwitWow Lucha Underground comic discussion video. We have finished reading the fourth and final issue of the Lucha Underground comic. It was great, and now we're here to talk about it. Now, John, before we talk about the issue itself, or, the individual, the actual content of it, I want to just kind of brief overview. What was your take on this issue compared to the other three?
You know what? I thought this was another exceptional issue. I told you in conversation that for me personally, I still think in the end the Pentagon issue was my personal favorite. I'd be very curious down in the comments actually what our listeners thought was their favorite comic. But this does a great job telling perhaps the most intriguing story of all, which we will get into here in a few seconds. So yeah, narratively this was strong. Again, the artwork again was just fantastic. And I think the timing of the release of this comic was no accident, but we'll get into that a little bit later, Ashton. But yeah, I love this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Pentagon one was the most game changing because it revealed to us that Ian is still no longer around and that the whole time it's just been Vampiro trying to appear just sane enough to get out of the asylum and go back to the temple with Pentagon.
Right, right.
Whereas this one, I think this was a great issue by far. Probably, I would say the second best, behind only the Pentagon issue. But I think that what made this one drop a little bit, as far as really like substance, as far as really like, oh my god, this affects the universe, like the Pentagon issue did, was because we got a little bit of a retelling of a story that we just heard like last week or the week before regarding Cueto, Matanza, and their mother.
That is true. Yes, I was surprised they went that route because normally these comics have been good about telling us new information that we had been ignorant about. But to your point, we got a kind of, live exposition of this same story.
Yeah.
That said, I won't hold it against it too much because I will say seeing it in an illustrated form, I felt like was a different kind of take, even though again it was the same substance overall. So yeah, it was still good. I still think it brought something new to the table, even if it wasn't necessarily from a narrative aspect.
Yeah. So do we want to get right into talking about the content of this issue?
Let's do it.
All right. We start out with the final sort of scene in the Cueto Black Lotus Matanza story from season one, where El Dragon Azteca shows up. Cueto talks about, what's the penalty for breaking the treaty? That's right, it's death. And then Dragon Azteca is like, don't do it, Cueto. And Cueto's just like, oh, I don't have to. And then we get to see Black Lotus killing El Dragon Azteca. And then, of course, they leave the temple. And then there's a really cool little like chase scene where there are people trying to follow Cueto, Black Lotus, and Matanza, but they do manage to lose them in time. And then they kind of go to a really sleazy hotel and they're just kind of chilling out. And Black Lotus is just like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Why are you not just unleashing Matanza on the temple right now? Like, why do we need to leave the temple and take a break and then come back later? And Cueto explains, listen, my brother's killed before, but if he's going to need to, create as much destruction as he's going to in order for us to take back the temple, he's rusty. He's going to need some practice. So we need to get him some practice. And this kind of shows you exactly why they have this sort of sacrificial altar, this training temple specifically to sacrifice people to Matanza. And then Cueto tells this story about his brother and him when they were kids and how they liked to have fun, but their mother was really strict and had a really short temper and drank a lot and hit them. And then talks about, Matanza eventually having enough of it and beating her over the head with that bowl and killing her. And then they talked about how he talked about they were free then. So then we get to this new temple where Cueto is just kind of taking on all challengers to feed them to Matanza to train him to kind of, shake off the rust, so to speak. And we see Matanza training. We see him lifting weights. We see this just huge, big, bulky figure lifting up a massive dumbbell. Like he's killing it with the free weights. And then we see three random dudes, and Cueto's just like, oh yeah, this show's gonna be unlike anything you've ever seen before. And he takes them in, and Matanza literally rips one of their arms off before finishing them all off.
Yeah, this comic was fantastic. I mean, Azure pretty much just gave you guys the whole layout right there. Kind of working backwards here for a second.
Do you
One,
want
when
me
I
to
mentioned,
finish with the last, I think, like 3 frames or three
sure,
pages before we could actually really dissect it?
certainly.
Okay, it's really simple. I just wanted to get it in before we really do the dissecting. So then it says that it's a few weeks later, and they're on the way back to this new temple, and Cueto's just like, it's almost time, and Black Lotus says, time for what? And Cueto says, to return to the temple. And then we're just like, well, how do you know? How are you going to know when it is time? And we just see the door to the new temple ripped open, and Matanza's just standing there. And Black Lotus is like, oh my god. And Cueto's like, does that answer your question? We're ready. And then that's it. And I guess now they're on their way to the temple.
First and foremost, I just put this out there. Like I told Ashton in conversation, like I'm going to say again here. Timing of this comic to me was not an accident. We have Aztec Warfare now in less than 2 weeks. And I feel like this comic, for me personally, really substantiates and, dare I say, even validates the idea that Dario Cueto is going to return with Matanza in tow on the Aztec Warfare episode.
Dude, honestly, I feel like I wish there would have been 5 issues at least. It would have been ideal if there would have been an issue for every other week for the entire season. So it ended up being 13, I guess. But I think 5 would have been even better, because then they could have done, with the 4th issue, they could have done some more backstory on Marty and his sister. And then we would
Right.
have seen them for the first time last night on the show. And then 2 weeks from then, they would have had this issue come out. And then, assuming Cueto and Matanza are here for Aztec Warfare, that would have been right before that episode. So I think then the timing would have been even better, and then you could have fit in some of the Marty and his sister storyline too. And then my personal curiosity would have been satisfied knowing what the hell they did to Sexy Star.
That's certainly true. I won't contend that. I think you have a great point. Also, just a little shout out there. I liked how the hotel they were staying at was the Plaza Hotel. Ivan Plaza is the editor of the comic, and you guys can follow him on Twitter. I believe
Yeah,
with the same name.
that's true. Yeah, wow. Good
So
catch, dude. Yeah, I'm sure there are tons of little details and Easter eggs and that kind of stuff in these comics, and I don't have that eye for detail, so I'm glad you picked that up.
yeah, he's done excellent work on this series. I mean, obviously, Chris DeJoseph, he's the writer of it. The whole story and everything. So
Joseph and
everybody,
Justin Ortiz, don't forget. And
yeah,
follow
and Justin Ortiz.
Follow him on Twitter at Just Ortiz.
You know what? I may not have, so that may even be something for me to do. Just everybody that's collaborated on this series has done a magnificent job. So I really wanted to give props there with that little tease there, that little drop there with the Plaza Inn.
And if you look at
yeah,
the credits, it also says management and production, Ivan Plaza and Justin Ortiz. So both those guys had a really big hand in making these comics, and they've done a great job. And obviously they had help with like DeJoseph, and then Fabian Rangel Jr. did the script. Jamie Jones did the art. Colors by Doug Garbark. I'm sure I mispronounced that, and I apologize. Letters by Ryan Ferrier, and cover art. I know he's another guy that we follow, AC Osorio. So yeah, this was what was that, like 10 guys maybe at most, maybe 9 that
right.
worked on these comics, and they're so good. And the only guy that I know of that crosses over from the TV show that also worked on the comic is DeJoseph.
Right. I will say another reason that I like the retelling of this story was that I think it does, through illustrations and through it being told through a comic book medium, it serves to humanize both Cueto and Matanza a little bit more, because you see them as boys. You have that visualization. So I think humanizing them is interesting. However, I will
honestly,
say,
though, John, I'm going to say this. I don't even know if I agree that this humanizes them. It shows you that they are human, which is nice, but then it also kind of shows you that they've always been a little bit different, because, I mean, even as boys, Cueto was kind of, he kind of came off as like this sort of greasy, like scamming kind of guy, and Matanza literally murdered his own mother with a freaking Red Bull. So even though they are both human, I think that this comic, if anything, reveals just how different and not quite, not your average Joe as everyone else, how much to that degree they are.
I mean, that's certainly true. I could give you that point. I just think when I say humanizes them, I mean, because when you look at these frames with the flashback,
Yeah, like it does show you that they are human because they had childhoods and they were vulnerable. But I think that if anything, it just shows you that now they're so far away from that. You know what I mean?
well, I think what I liked about it though, dude, is when you look at the illustration of the mother. I mean, from the face, and I like the image where it's almost like shadowy, and she's got her arm raised up. And if you notice her dress kind of comes up almost tentacle like a monster.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I really appreciated that. And then by the dresser, you see the Tia Tequila, the drink, which kind of implies that maybe she had a liquor problem, handling kids by herself. Maybe she had the booze a little too often to get through it, because we know that the father was absent and he was sorely missed. So, and that's another thing too. This comic doesn't answer all the questions because, I mean, we know a little bit about Cueto's father because, if I'm not mistaken, he put the god in Matanza's
Well,
dead
yeah, he
body.
sacrificed Matanza to the god. Yeah.
Yeah, he sacrificed Matanza. So when does he come back in the
Unless,
pit?
I mean, we might even be able to see the Cueto's father if that's actually him holding the heart up in the frame earlier on in the book.
I mean, let's go back and see, because yeah,
Because there's a panel here where it's a full screen panel, and it says Matanza is something more than a man, and it shows a bunch of ancient Aztec imagery with like a pyramid and a skull face and this guy holding up a heart with a bunch of Aztec jewelry and a headdress and stuff on. And then at the bottom of the frame, you see two guys with spears fighting each other, and one of them spearing the other one through the stomach. And Matanza's eyes are in the middle of it. So what if the guy holding up the heart is the Cueto's father, and that's frickin' Matanza's heart, and he's just sacrificing him to one of the gods?
That could be. That's an excellent observation. And even so, though, I still think it leaves questions, because if this sacrifice was made, we know, again, going to the mother's side and this whole thing, that Matanza's still a boy. The father was absent around this time. So, A, was the death of the mother, is that what brought the father back into the fold? And B,
Yeah.
what prompted him to make this sacrifice to begin with? Was his son in mortal danger? Was this the only way he could keep his son alive? Maybe Matanza was near death and this is the only thing he could think to do, just instead of him
Or
dying
maybe
completely
he
with
was
no
just a
purpose.
complete scumbag, and that's why he left in the first place. And the only reason he came back is because Matanza and Cueto were trying to survive on their own, and Matanza was a really good fighter. And they were, Cueto is a smart guy. He's a hustler. So he was using Matanza's fighting ability to make some money. Their father turns up in town looking for his sons and wife, maybe because he heard about her death, and he hears about these kids that are winning all these fights and making all this money, and he's like, oh, that's probably them. And he goes to find them, and that's how they kind of reunite.
Yeah, he could very well be a scumbag. I mean, again,
Dude,
Lucha.
well, I mean, first of all, he left. That immediately kind of, he's obviously not father of the year if he left.
Right.
So, and I mean, the fact that he did sacrifice Matanza to the ancient Aztec gods, he can't be. I mean, at the very least, he's clearly not mentally stable, because no mentally stable person would do that.
And I would completely agree with
I
you.
mean,
What's
even if the son was dying, that's some Pet Cemetery shit.
Yeah, it really is. God, Stephen King. But I gotta say, just to keep at the forefront of his mind, because again, this is Lucha Underground. I don't trust anything that I even believe anymore when it comes to Lucha Underground. This is all coming from Cueto's perspective. Not
Yeah,
saying it's not true,
that
okay?
is
Because it
that's
very
a
well
good
could be.
point, though. I'm glad you pointed that out.
But it is all coming from Cueto's perspective, and he did say, I don't remember what happened next, but when it was over, we were free. Well, I guess he found out later, that yeah, Matanza did it, because I thought he said in the live version that yeah, Matanza got the bull and he killed her, and we see that here in the comic.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to believe with Cueto. I think Black Lotus is kind of the same way, which I'll say that was another good thing about the comic too. When you talk about the little things, the relationship starts off as contentious. Just because she kills El Dragon Azteca doesn't mean she's suddenly buddy buddy with Dario Cueto. He really had to coax her into, come along with me. I have a plan, and that's why you see like she's just going along with
Right.
everything in the live
I
scenes.
mean, you said that I have a plan, but she even asks him straight up. Like, she tries to leave. She gets out of the vehicle and tries to go away and just kind of escape. And he's just like, listen, you don't want to do that. You will not survive on your own. And she asks him what the hell he's going to do for her and if he has a plan. And he's like, are you kidding me? I'm Dario Cueto. Of course I have a plan.
Yeah, he's just like, trust in me. I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna take care of us, and I'm gonna take
Frickin'
back the temple.
Kai from Jungle Book.
Exactly.
The snake that trusted me song. That's freaking Cueto, man. He's
Yeah,
got those
man.
crazy eyes.
Manipulative bastard. And that's the beauty of it though. And then you look at Matanza, where I like how this is all played, right? Because we finally do see Matanza, but in comic book form. So in one way they satiate the curiosity, but they still kind of tickle the imagination because, well, you haven't seen the real thing. You've only seen our depiction in this comic book medium of what Matanza looks like. And I gotta say, I dig the mask. That is a really cool looking mask for a killer like that. I think it's simple. It's got that metallic kind of look. And yeah, he just looks menacing to me. So
Yeah, I love it, dude. And honestly, too, it honestly almost reminds me of like a Bane mask.
Bane, I think, is a great example. I mean, I know, one is hockey, but with the whole like suit that he's wearing, I kind of got a Jason Voorhees vibe a
Yeah,
little bit,
well,
which I like that
yeah.
too.
I mean, it honestly kind of reminds me of the suit that Daniel Bryan wore when he joined the Wyatt family,
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
with the sleeves torn off. Like, it literally looks. His entire getup, even down to the mask, looks like something that somebody would be forced to wear in insane asylum, and he just freaking broke out.
Yeah. And to me, like this comic, again, even though we already heard the story of the mother before, I don't know if I said it before, during that segment, but I'll certainly say it here. To me, I feel most sympathetic to the guy covered in blood. And I know that's so weird to feel the most sympathy for Matanza, but you think about he had to watch his younger brother get abused by his mother and he couldn't take it anymore, so he kills her with the Red Bull. And then his father sacrifices him and, puts in his vessel of a body a freaking god. So that's really twisted. Like,
Yeah,
that's quite a life to live.
yeah.
So yeah, it's funny because for a character this menacing, I really would say, in all honesty, that I view the Matanza character as just one of pure tragedy.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's
completely
really
agree,
something.
man. It is, and that's I'm glad you used that word too, tragedy, because that's the exact word that I would use to describe the Matanza character. Honestly, the whole Cueto brothers story arc, both of them.
Yeah,
There's tragedy in both of their lives and in their stories.
I mean, this is the kind of shit that would make Shakespeare's head spin, man, because it's just funny to me and a kind of
You know what though,
poetry.
dude? You say it would make Shakespeare's head spin, but it really wouldn't. It's really Here's the thing. I think that we've gotten so used to bad storytelling in wrestling that when we see really good storytelling, we think that it's this like crazy complex thing. This is really simple.
Right.
This is a story based on real life with the volume turned up, because kids get abused by their parents every day, but
Yeah.
because of the confines of you know the social sort of world, these kids aren't going to murder their mother. But if you turn the volume up to 11 in a world where the lines of morality are blurred a little bit, it makes perfect sense, because I'm sure that the kids who are abused by their parents want to kill them, but or at the very least, punish them in some way. And just so happens maybe Matanza has or had, when he was still human, some kind of mental illness, and he reacted in a certain way. And it wouldn't surprise me if he did have mental illness, because clearly their mom did too. So maybe it's something that runs in the family. And then you look at Cueto, and rather than having the Matanza who reacted very violently to a life of adversity, Cueto looked at it as a constant, like he's constantly seeking opportunities to better his position in life, because like it's one of those things where a lot of the time you'll see like someone that was starving as a child will tend to sort of hoard food because they always have that mentality of, I don't know when I'm going to have my next meal, so I need to make sure that I have as much as I can. Well,
And yeah,
Cueto is kind of that kind of character. I mean, not to that degree, but he's constantly, because he had such a horrible situation when he was growing up, he's constantly looking to make the best for himself in selfish ways out of any given situation, which is why he is such a sort of greasy, hustler type. And I think that it's perfect characterization. And I think that one of the biggest things that wrestling doesn't really ever go to is what shaped characters when they were young, because I mean, there's probably tons of science that says that stuff that it happens to you in the first X amount of years of your life influences you for the rest of your life, and your character and your personality and your decisions that you make and everything like that.
right. And you know what? You saying everything you did, particularly about Cueto, to me, and especially this comic kind of reinforces this idea. Like, I think Cueto, save for the father himself, who we know only so much about, I think he's the scummiest of the bunch. And why I say that is, yes, this guy was clearly abused by his mother on a multitude of levels and had no father, and he is a victim in that regard. But here's the thing. Matanza, at least in his own mind, not only saved Cueto from that abuse, but Cueto got to keep his humanity, quite literally, because he wasn't sacrificed by his father. Matanza was. So
Well,
Cueto, I
yeah,
think,
I mean, that's 100% true, and that I won't argue. But I mean, if you just think about Dexter, I think that you lose a shred of your humanity when you're that young and you witness someone die, even if you aren't the direct cause of the death.
oh, certainly. I think just my point is him not being sacrificed, him keeping his humanity in a very literal sense,
Yeah,
remaining human.
right.
He had the greatest freedom of choice, and what he does with that choice is, I mean, let's just call it what it is, at least in my view. He exploits what his brother is for his personal benefit. So you
Right.
could see the care when they were children. I'm not saying that Cueto never cared about Matanza,
Right.
but clearly I feel like Matanza loved Cueto more then Cueto ended up loving him in the long run.
Right.
So I think that really just shows how despicable Dario Cueto is, at least in my book.
But then you
So,
also have to wonder, two things. First of all, is Cueto really the one in control here, or is it Matanza who just loves to, fight and kill people, and Cueto just finds the best ways to channel that so that they are, they don't end up in prison or, like in Matanza's case, in a psych ward again.
and that's an excellent point. I mean, Cueto may carry the key around his neck, but that doesn't mean he's in full control, that he controls the lock that goes with it.
Yeah.
I think I even said early on in season one, I think it was, that I could see Matanza turning on Cueto at one point.
Yep.
I think you look at a monster like Matanza and what he represents, especially now, knowing that he has a god inside him. When have you ever heard a god being restrained by a mortal man? I
Exactly.
never have.
Yeah.
You look at any kind of mythology, that never fucking happens. If
Yep.
anything, it's the reverse. The mortal tries to strike down the god, and the god teaches him a thing or two about humility.
Yep.
That's how all mythology seems to go. And I can't see Lucha Underground, for as different as it is, being that different. Honestly, I think Cueto's days are numbered. I don't think Black Lotus should be what he's worrying about. I think he should be worried about what actually, in a stroke of irony, he feels most comfortable about, and that is Matanza. So, yeah, I mean, I thought this was a great comic. Again, I do think the Pentagon one, for me personally, was the best of the bunch. But, I mean, still, great artwork here. I mean, I like talking about the illustrations and the art once every issue discussion video. And my personal favorite illustration for this episode, definitely the guy's arm getting torn off. I felt like that was so well done. And you just see the guy's expression like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? So that was great. I felt like the entire illustration of the flashback was well done too. Great colors, and again, I think another favorite frame of mine, not just for the pure violence, but the mother's dress, and she's got the hand raised up, very monster-like, again, with the way the dress comes up, which I think was a nice touch. So again, great illustrations all throughout. Another worthwhile comic, guys, definitely. So check it out at your earliest convenience.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like the more we talk about this issue, the more I like it, and I'm almost like close to being like, you know what, maybe this is the best one, just because you like to talk last night about how you love the idea that they're not telling us exactly what happened with Marty and his sister and Sexy Star.
Right.
I like how many questions this issue raised, because this makes you question, okay, who is the one that calls the shots here, Cueto or Matanza? Uh, if does Matanza still have any humanity left, or is it exclusively just that the Aztec god has taken over and that's it? He's just that's just who he is now. Another question would be if what happened after they killed their mother. Another question would be, when did their father come into their lives in order to sacrifice Matanza to the Aztec god? And then I also have to raise the question, did that sacrifice ever even happen, or was Rey Mysterio just misinformed?
And that's a great question. And what I thought of about the whole ritualistic ceremony was, the father killed immediately after. Was he able to reap any benefit from this sacrifice?
Yeah.
The tribe that he belonged to, what was his relationship like with the tribe that he belonged to that wanted this sacrifice to begin with? So I feel like there's a lot with the father's backstory that I would love to know as well.
Yeah, see, this is the kind of discussion that I love to have, and I think that that's why this specific issue of the comic is so much more. It's so different than the other ones that we've read, because the other ones answered questions that we had. This one really didn't answer much at all, other than just why did Cueto have to leave and not just kind of take over the temple right away with Matanza, but it raised so many questions.
Yeah, definitely.
You know
Another
what?
thing,
I'm gonna say it right now. I hope the Lucha Underground comic comes back for season 3.
I think it will, dude. I think Lucha Underground knows that they've got something worthwhile here. I mean, certainly with how much discussion it's provoked, I mean, you need not look further than the existence of this series that you and I have done. By the way, quick side note to substantiate an earlier point I made about the mother being an alcoholic. I noticed in the panel when she's talking to the boys about you couldn't go play outside, I never told you could do that. She is holding a bottle in her hand,
Yeah,
which
that's
I think
why
is
I
different
said
from
that
what
she
it
had
does.
alcohol problems, because they're like, it seems like most of the scenes that you see her in, there is something alcohol related also in that scene.
Yeah, definitely. So, just another great comic. I'm
Maybe that's
actually,
what, that's probably where Cueto got it too, because Cueto drinks a lot of alcoholic drinks.
he
He's
does, and
constantly keeping himself tipsied up.
addictions like that are genetic. So I think, yeah, that does really explain a lot. And man, his father, I come away having more questions about his father than anybody else in the Cueto clan, especially because you did point my attention to the guy holding the heart, which I noticed. I just never made the connection. Holy crap, that's probably his father. Especially with the eyes in the middle, to your point. Yeah, guys, this, I think, in terms of provoking inquiry and things of that nature, this may have been the best issue. While I may have liked the Pentagon issue from a narrative standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint, I think as far as generating discussion, generating intrigue, hooking you in, looking towards Aztec warfare, for me personally, because Cueto says it's time. Yeah, this comic, I feel like, was the final bomb to go off, so to speak. I think big things are coming.
Dude,
So,
I don't know if you noticed this, but if you look, um, it's about, I would say, oh, I wish I could see like a page number on these, but it's right after the story about the mom, and then you see Matanza lifting up the gigantic weights, and then on the next page you see those 3 guys getting ready to enter the temple. The one on the right looks exactly like John Cena.
wait, let me look again. Oh my god, yeah.
That is 100, and he's the one that gets his arm torn off too.
Oh
That's it.
man.
That's it. I'm calling it. This is my favorite issue.
Well, there you go, man. There
That
you
put it
go.
over the top, man. You got John Cena and you're getting his arm ripped off.
And you've got John Cena and Lucha Underground merch, which surprisingly looks good. So,
And
there you
it's
go.
so clearly meant to be him too, because it's got like the square jaw and the pastel colors and even the freaking wristband. Like, I love that it's just different enough that there's not going to be any kind of like licensing trademark issue or anything like that, but it's obvious enough that you can tell exactly what they're trying to show you.
That is a great catch, dude. I've looked over those images several times now in the course of this discussion. I never made that connection. So great catch there.
Oh my god, that is amazing. Yeah, this is my favorite issue.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
was thinking about it before because of all the discussion it raised. That put it over the top. There you go.
All right, well, on that note, I really have nothing else to add, dude.
I agree. That's a great note to end on. All right, guys. We'll see you all for our SmackDown review tonight, and then Roadblock live reactions on Saturday. And you know what? I am going to just really quick here. I am going to check the poll from our Raw review to see if you guys want us to do preview and predictions or not. And if you do, we'll do those. So just want to check this. Here we go. And information, poll results. Oh my god, it's really close. Tell you what, guys. um, it, I'm going to let people keep voting on this. Go to our Raw review and vote if you want preview and predictions for Roadblock, because right now it is really close. There is only a one vote difference, so I'm not going to call it right now. If we get more of a definitive answer by tomorrow, we'll make a decision then. So we'll see you guys either for that or for preview or for or rather we're going to see you for SmackDown and then either preview predictions or just Roadblock live reactions. See you then, guys.